If you guys have not seen this yet, Michael Todd has rebroken his world record on the Devin Larratt style pronation lift. So in the Gennady quick vignette preparation, Michael ended up hitting right at 190 pounds, I believe. And he has now beat that record. He has now lifted 191.5 pounds on the same lift. So he hasn't really taken any time off. He hasn't really taken some big deload after his match. He's already on the grind again. He's already hitting new PRs. Now that looked a little bit weird because Michael did end up falling over. But as far as the technique, I think it's just as good as his last lift. And you can see right here, right there, that it does totally come off the ground. This is a super legit lift in my opinion. And once again, everything that Michael is doing right, he's maintaining that form. To me, this lift is not about having a tight angle. I know that the last video I made about Michael's lift, a lot of people in the comments were saying that Michael's form is really bad because his shoulder, the distance between his shoulder and his hand or his elbow flexor angle is very open. But to me, that isn't really what matters. This is the style that Michael arm wrestles in. He's an open top roller. So this is the angle that I would actually like to see Michael pulling in. I don't really like to see Michael pulling with, say, a 90-degree shoulder angle or a 90-degree elbow flexor angle, because that's not the way that he competes. This is the way that he competes. To me, what actually really, really matters is how parallel is your forearm. If Michael's forearm was super vertical, it was way up in the air, then that would mean he's not really putting all of this weight on his elbow flexor and his pronator. He's only putting a smaller percentage of that weight on there. But Michael's forearm is pretty much perfectly at parallel. And like I've said in the past, I think it's more parallel than the forearm angle that we see from Devin Larratt, more parallel than the forearm angle we see from Levon or pretty much anyone else that I've seen do this lift. So as far as a super direct translating lift for Michael Todd's particular style, since he is an open top roller, I think this lift is about as perfect as it could possibly be. I do like that he's not lifting it from the straight up King's move angle. And if he was lifting it from a literal flat angle, then his upper arm would match that of his lower arm. And of course, he's not doing that. He's still in a pretty tight angle, all things considered, since it is Michael Todd. He's often in an even more open angle than this in his actual matches. But overall, as far as his technique, I think that this is really, really good. Another thing I noticed is that his pronation does not get turned down at all. Something that we sometimes see is that right as this is budged off the ground, this thumb kind of gets rotated a little bit down, and then the athlete kind of has to bring it back. I don't see that happening at all. It looks like Michael's pronation or his rotation of his wrist and his thumb remains completely constant throughout the entirety of this lift. I don't see any movement, any rotation in his hands. And I also don't see this angle opening whatsoever. Michael locks this kind of open angle. And then once he actually starts to go, it doesn't look like it's really opening any further. He's not hitting his King's move, but he's lifting this weight with that open top roll angle. So let me know what you guys think about this, but I think that this is super impressive. Michael is beginning to approach 200 pounds. And as we know, and the reason I would guess that he's going super hard on this already without much time to rest after the Gennady match is because he has a match coming up with Hermes Gasparini that I believe will take place at the next East versus West. And Hermes is ranked at number 3 in the world, I believe, right now. And this is a lift that I do think is going to have a really good carryover versus Hermes, and potentially at some point, I think it's a lift that's going to have a really good carryover in a Levon match. So like I said, I wouldn't necessarily recommend most people to do this lift. I think for most people, this would be really bad form because most people don't have access to that open top roll or to a King's move if they get stretched out like this. Most people are going to want to have a 90-degree or probably even narrower than a 90-degree angle because you're going to want to maintain some sort of access to shoulder commitments, ability to press, ability to transition. And if you get stretched out, the match is probably already over. But for Michael, he has perfect access to this open top roll. Michael's very comfortable here. And the match is far from over if he gets stretched out. I would say, if anything, he probably wants to be in this more open position. It's probably a sign that the match is going better for him. So from Michael Todd, I think that this lift directly translates, or is at least as close as you could possibly get to directly translating, considering it's just a one-dimensional lift. Obviously, he can't train cup and other things at the same time while doing this. There's maybe not a huge emphasis on his wrist rise, but as close as you could possibly get for a one-dimensional, one-vector lift, I think that this is probably it for Michael. And I think before he pulls Hermes, I wouldn't be surprised if he hits at least 195 pounds on this lift, and he might even hit 200. I think that if he does end up defeating Hermes and he gets a Levon match at some point in the future, he probably will hit 200 pounds on that lift. And so all things considered, oh, and here's a secondary angle so you can see that weight really does get off the ground. You can see it clears right there. And you can see that arm angle, in my opinion, that is really a pretty tight arm angle for Michael Todd. And considering that he does start maybe just ever so slightly above parallel, but to me, that's pretty much perfect. So congrats to Michael Todd on what I believe is a new world record, because I think he was holding the world record at 190 pounds anyway. So Michael has broken his own world record. And I think that this is just going to continue as he gets stronger and stronger in this lift. It seemed to work very well against Gennady, and we'll see how well this works against Hermes Gasparini in the next few months. All right, thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you later.